Go ahead,
I'm rolling.
mark it.
Speed.
Okay.
John Young, take one.
Clear your.
Clear the laptop? Okay. We'll start today and work backwards. Can you tell us about your role today at NASA?
They've got me doing a lot of stuff that's associated with technical issues. I counted up the other day, I was working on 128 technical things and just little items. And the way you do technical stuff here now, you tell people about it, and pretty soon you tell them often enough, they think they thought of it themselves. That's where you get it done.
And you're working on safety issues?
Well, some of them are related to safety issues. They're just better ways of doing things that make the space shuttle and the space station more reliable and work better. And I don't know if that's related to safety or not. It's probably more related to survival.
People have told me, and we talked a bit about it last summer, you keep up with lunar science. What's going on right now, the one thing, maybe two, that really interests you?
I think the Lunar and Planetary Science Conference next week will have a lot of things that are related to what we're doing around here. And the thing that I think that's really exciting is the discovery by the prospector of water at the poles and Clementine also. And there's some other interesting things about the moon that we've gotten from prospector that people don't think about much, but some of the magnetic fields associated with the moon probably direct the solar wind in different ways than we thought about maybe, and I think that'd be very interesting to go up there and see if that actually is the way it works.
What would that tell us?
Well, I'll tell you where you could find a lot of that implanted hydrogen from the solar wind and helium-3 that Jack Schmitt likes, and so it would tell you a lot of things. I think going back to the moon, although it's only a very small place, it's our sister satellite. I think we learned a great deal.
What's your take on the data and results from Clementine Prospector? Is there water? Your
I don't
opinion?
know. I think we ought to send a little rover up there and find out. Send it to the poles and find out. Well, a lot of people have talked about that. We can do that as one of the faster, better, cheaper missions, and we sure ought to do it. I think that'd be great to find that out.
Do you think if and when we go, I know we've talked with Alan Binder, he's going to go some way or another.
Good for him.
Are we going to find water?
I hope we do. I hope we do. There's a theory that Jack Schmitt says it's only hydrogen, but of course, with all the hydrogen, you could find enriched hydrogen, and there's plenty of oxygen in the rocks. You could make your own water real quick.
Can you? Okay. Should we go back?
You bet. You bet. I think it's absolutely essential that I think it'll be the greatest achievement of the next century when human beings learn to live and work on other places in their solar system. I think it's going to happen. I think the human species is about ready to spread out.
Great. Well, you answered my next question. What's the most important thing we can do there?
Just learn how to live and work on other places in the solar system, explore and learn, and I think we'll find out a great deal about the human condition in the solar system and the human species, and we'll find out a lot about ourselves. It'll be a lot of fun. Everybody will love lunar gravity. 1/6 gravity is great, and they love Mars gravity. 3/8 piece of cake, really nice.
What about going back to the moon as opposed to going to Mars?
If you're really serious about long-term habitation on the moon and Mars, I think you want to go back to the moon first and learn how to do all these things that are really difficult that we're working on right now in advanced projects. We're working on recycling air, food waste, water, and growing crops in this in a closed-loop environment. It is extremely difficult. I mean, see, on the moon, you could have a crop failure. It wouldn't do anything for you. You have a crop failure on Mars with that system, you're all dead, because it's so much time away. The moon is 2.5 days away from a can of beans. Mars is 200 days away from a can of beans. See, so we know we're going to make mistakes in these adventures, and people always make mistakes. You got to make mistakes you can recover from. Doesn't do any good to make the kind that kill you. Not no fun.
Better to make the mistakes on the moon, you think?
Absolutely. Like I say, 2.5 days away from case of beans is the right place to start. And I think we'll learn so much about working in the dust and working in vacuum, pure vacuum, that it just couldn't pass up the opportunity to do that. And we'll make the kind of mistakes that you can get away with too, I hope. You know, those others are bad.
Great. Okay.
Mark?
Mark?
Second six, I'll call for it.
Okay.
Go ahead.
John Young, take 2. Some people have told me the moon movement went somewhat underground after Apollo ended, 72. Can you describe that time after Apollo and your role in somewhat in keeping the moon alive?
I don't think I had anything to do with it. I just think when you go to a place that's as weird as the moon was when we got there and looked at it, the idea of not going back is just, it's unreasonable. You need to do that. We need to learn human beings need to learn how to live and work on other places in the solar system. I think 25 years of solar exploration has told us how at risk this planet right here is from bad events. The planet can take the bad events, the people on them can't take them. So we need to spread out the species a little bit. And we'll learn a lot too. The moon was never out of favor with me. I thought it was a great idea. I can't imagine that we stopped, but we did. They just couldn't get enough money to do it, and they couldn't get people interested in doing it with all other things going on, like the Vietnam War and all the other things that are happening. But when George Bush was president, they had a synthesis group that said they could go back to the moon and onto Mars, and they put in such a high price tag on it that nobody was interested.
That was bad. That was in 91. Did you think we'd be back on the moon by now?
I always thought we'd been back on the moon. Surely we'd have base up there 25 years after the first flight. Couldn't believe we don't.
Should Apollo have continued after 17? I mean, obviously there was a couple more rockets ready to go.
I think the big guys were ready to stop Apollo from the standpoint they didn't believe they were learning enough compared to the risks they were taking, I think. Even though I'm not, the money, the Saturn V rocket, if we'd had a Saturn V rocket today, we could put the whole space station in orbit one shot. And of course that'd be the way to do it, if you could. Yeah.
Jeff, do you mind just asking if there are plans for the Saturn V still around?
Okay, yeah. For the we're going to dial back to the first hour for a second. What happened to the plans for the Saturn V?
What happened to plans for?
Well, could the Saturn V be reconstructed? Should it be? Is that at all a possibility?
I don't know that you would reconstruct the Saturn V. You might reconstruct something like it. There are plans available to build uprated F1 engines that powered the first stage of the Saturn V. There's the tooling is available at the Marshall Space Flight Center to build that 31-foot diameter first stage tank. I don't know if you do that or not.
But we haven't lost that technology.
No, the technology's not lost. There's new upgraded stuff that you could put in there and probably make it a lot better machine. But it would take a lot of testing and a lot of work to do it.
Let's talk about your moon experiences. Starting with 16, what was the highlight of your J mission?
I don't know that when you talk about the overall highlight was overall getting the whole mission done. It was a very tough mission because when we got to the moon, we had to wait for 3 hours while they evaluated the engine. We lost. We solved in real time with us on the ground and the people all over the United States. We solved about 100 problems in real time. It's kind of like what life is all about, and so I was very pleased to be able to do it. I thought for a while we were going to abort and turn around and come home without even landing on the surface. I was delighted when we got to press on and do the work.
I remember I was struck by that when you said you had 100 operational errors. Can you give me an example of some of them that you solved?
That's normal kind of things you run into when you're doing something for the first time. For example, I had to use a pair of pliers to get the cosmic ray experiment out of the case it was in to get it back in the lunar module. We knocked the fender off the rover. I tripped over the heat flow experiment. There's all kinds of things. Driving some of the cores was very difficult. On on the lunar module, our S-band antenna didn't point at the Earth. It was locked in place, and so we had to do a lot of really real-time, innovative, creative work doing lunar module chess and checkout. It was a lot of fun. Yeah.
Challenge. You went to Descartes and Cayley prepared to find volcanoes.
Yes.
I mean, that's what the
Yeah.
geologists were telling you were going to
Yeah,
find. What were your? Can you take us back there? Your first words, your first impressions on those EVAs.
yeah. Well, we didn't find any volcanic rocks. I think they thought we was going to find rhyolitic type rocks where we'd done a lot of geology field trips, but we didn't.
John Young, take 3. You went to Descartes and Cayley prepared to find volcanoes. At least that's what the geologists told you were going to find. What were your first words, your first impressions on those EVAs about what you found and what you saw?
Well, we found different kinds of rocks up there. It was very unusual. They thought we were going to find volcanic rocks, and we found impact rocks, breccias. It was made out of impacts, and all these rocks were squeezed together and put together in a really tight thing, and they're very old rocks. The average age up there is 3.92 billion years old at the site, and some of those rocks have ages 4.2 to 4.6 billion years old, so they're very old rocks. And they tell you a lot about the impact processes in the local region. So I think it was important for us to find those rocks. And of course the ground argued with us, we didn't know what we were doing, and we're looking at the wrong kind of rocks. And you know, you can almost convince old fighter pilots that maybe they didn't know what kind of rocks they was looking at. But I finally said, why don't you take a look at them when you get them back in the lab?
The ground meaning the back room. You were
Yeah,
going through
yeah,
gym level to the back room.
Yeah,
Can you
we're
tell us
going
about
through
that?
our Capcoms to the back room, and there's a lot of people back there that were, you know, it was a fun time.
So you were telling them there are no volcanoes here, right?
We were saying we couldn't find any basalt. We could not find any volcanic rocks of any kind, and they were insisting that we must be misinterpreting what we were seeing. That's normal. We also found a magnetic field up there, an ancient magnetic field, and prospectors found a few more of those guys around the surface of the moon. I think that's very exciting.
What does that tell us?
Well, I think it tells us that in the old days, the moon must have had a magnetic field a lot like maybe back in early times, almost as big as the Earth's. So that ought to tell us something. It kind of says where the moon, kind of helps define where the moon must have come from and what kind of rocks it must have been made out of.
Could you paint a picture for our viewers to go along with some of the images that we have of what the site was like? I know it was the southernmost site, and it was 8,000 feet higher than Tranquility, and so on.
That was a rolling site, rolling highlands, and it had impact rocks all over it. And there was all kinds of rays produced by these rocks coming out of the craters, South Ray and North Ray crater. And one of the things we had to worry about was not knocking the axle off the rover driving through these rock piles, and because that would really slow you down. So it was a pretty challenging problem, and some of the slopes were pretty steep. We went up North Ray crater higher than 20 degrees because we bottomed out our pitch meter and broke it off. Yeah.
So 20 degrees is about. Can you give me an
20 degree
indication?
slope is not too bad. That's not too bad of a slope to climb up, but it was pretty exciting with us wearing those pressure suits. When we got up and turned around and looked back, it looked like we'd climbed straight up. I was a little nervous about us going back.
You were about 1,600 feet above the plane, weren't you?
I think the mountain is about 1,200 feet high total. You know, 300, 400 meters.
So you had a good view from up there.
Great view. You could see all the way back to the lunar module. You could see South Ray crater. In fact, we looked over at South Ray crater, which was a little 2-million-year-old impact crater that we found up there, and found out that we could probably have driven right over to it. One of the places they'd like for us to have gone, but we didn't get a chance.
What were your first thoughts when you were you driving or you were walking up to House Rock? I forget.
We had to park on the hillside at North Ray Crater and walk over to House Rock. I guess it was a couple of 100 yards. We didn't realize the rock just kept getting bigger and bigger. See, the problem with the moon is there's no telephone poles up there, so you can't tell how far things are away. No telephone poles up there yet, but we'll get some.
Just real quick, Sean, we're getting some feedback sound on the camera.
Yeah, we're getting a little scrape. I was hearing that.
Mhm.
So,
Okay.
John Young, take 4. So how did a Navy guy end up picking rocks up in the desert with Lee Silver?
That's a very interesting question because Lee was a geology professor at Caltech, and Jack Smith and Lee got together, and we were training. We were backing up Apollo 13 to Jim Lovell, and that was the first field trip we really ever had. We got down in the San Gabriel Mountains and down across San Andreas Fault there, and some other mountains down here, and the answer to the question was that the San Andreas Fault has moved 140 miles in very few million years, because some of the rock types that we found on one side of the fault were down down by the Salton Sea, from up north to down south.
So did that prepare you for sort of the jumble of rocks that you were in and clues that you were going to find on the moon?
No, but we had a lot of field trips to places like landslides and to working in glacial till. It's kind of like being on the moon, because when you pick up a rock on the moon, you really have no idea whether it came from down the road or whether it came from the other side of the moon till you get back on the Earth and take a look.
Apollo 10, you got pretty close to the moon, 47,000 feet. Your impressions then?
Well, I think Apollo 10, we did some really interesting tracking of the surface of the moon. The moon is it's an unusual place because all the craters are different. So if you know the rills and the craters, and they're all different, when you're flying over the moon, it's not like flying around the Earth. You know where you are all the time. There was a few very young-looking craters on the backside of the moon. One of them was King Crater. It's a big 77-kilometer crater, and it's got all kinds of different colors, and including stark whites and dark blacks and various shades of browns. And man, it's something. It's really weird.
I know in your press conference after 10, you were talking about Trisnecker. Do you recall that?
No, I don't remember.
Okay.
That's too far back for me. There were some great craters on the backside. We had them on Apollo 10. We'd named them all after places in the United States. We had one big crater back there we called America, another we called Florida, and places like that. And got in a lot of trouble because they didn't turn out to be named that at all. They're all numbered when we went there. They're now named.
Did the names stick?
None of our names stuck. No, the International Astronomical Bunch, they do that.
I know some of was it your mission? Or one of the J missions named them after the instructors. There's a head crater and.
Yes, they did. Yeah.
Were you ready? There was some discussion of landing for 10. Were you ready to land?
No, you couldn't have landed with a 10 lunar module. It was overweight. It didn't have gas in the ascent stage, and it had a problem with the radar too, and wouldn't have been able to land.
But if they'd given you the lightweight module that they gave to ended up the LM5, did you feel you could land with that?
I think they probably could have done it. They hadn't practiced the surface operations, so see, those were building block missions. Everybody worked very hard to do. And we were working very long hours every day to do the part of the mission that we had to learn. We had to learn how to translunar eject with a lunar module, go all the way to the moon, get in orbit with a lunar module, doing lunar module checkout and lunar module rendezvous, and that was a pretty big job. And then, so the 11 guys, they just added on the surface operations and went on down and did it. And then 12 guys landed on the spot on the moon and so forth. You know, that's how it went. They were building block missions. Everybody learned a great deal from the mission before.
Great. Then cut. And tell me what we've got. John Young, take 5. those early days before Apollo 10, what do you know about the moon?
There's a lot of argument before everybody went to the moon whether the moon was really impacts or whether it was all volcanoes. There was even some weird theories about it being big blobs of water that plopped out and made these circles up there. And so we learned a great deal when we went to the moon, I think.
How did you find it? Did you have good training in those theories, or how did you get?
Well, we were so busy training for Apollo 10 that we didn't get a lot of chance to do paleo, astrogeology from the air, but people like Jim Head and Lee Silver, they'd come and brief us on what they thought, and that was pretty good.
You'd flown Gemini missions. What did you think of that first group of scientist astronauts in the class of 65, 66? I guess they came on board.
Well, I thought that was a good idea. If we're going to go to the moon, we sure ought to have geologists in there. And I didn't, we'd been trained in geology all along. Our first field trip was to 1964. We went in Grand Canyon with some pretty famous guys from the U.S. Geological Survey. And so we got good training from the start. But I always thought a geology person on the moon was the right thing to do. I'm glad Jack got to go.
Would you have wanted a geologist or a scientist on your mission?
Well, I thought we had a lot of technical problems to worry about, and it turned out we did. Like I say, we had more than 100 problems we had to solve in real time, so I was glad Charlie was there because he really knew those systems well.
Hi, Mark.
You were back up on Gemini 6. Rendezvous hadn't even been attempted yet. How hard did you expect Rendezvous to be?
We got to spend a lot of time up at the plant at McDonnell in St. Louis practicing Rendezvous. They had a simulator up there, and we worked second shift from like 8 to 4 o'clock in the morning for about 6 weeks up there doing Rendezvous. So I figured we were able to do Rendezvous with everything failed except the thrusters. So I figured it would be, with the stuff working, it'd be nice to do it. It was a great mission. Wally and Tom had a great mission to do that Rendezvous on 6.
Rendezvous was crucial to LOR.
You bet.
What was the thinking around that time before they did their mission about LOR, about Rendezvous? Did you think they could pull it off? Or not they, but everybody.
I wasn't associated with that. I figured we'd just pull off the things we had to demonstrate in the Gemini program to prove things like LOR and the lunar orbit rendezvous and all those kind of things would work, and we'd just go from there and make all the rest of the things work. And the Gemini program pulled those things out, proved out rendezvous, proved out extravehicular activity, and proved out you could stay up there for long durations without being a basket case. So it was great.
On 10, you did conduct an EVA. Previous flights had a lot of problems. Let's see, now it cuts, because this is where my ignorance comes through, since I don't know.
You want to get into Mike Collins,
Collins?
the Collins
Okay.
and why? What did you learn from CERN and difficulties that
Yeah.
you tried to make it
On
different?
9, okay. Complicated question. Okay, I'll just start over again. Gemini 10, your EVA. What did you learn from CERN and Stafford's experiences on 9? What did you do differently?
Well, Mike thought about that a lot. Mike Collins did, who did the EVA, and he decided that we're going to have a nitrogen backpack just like Gene was going to have that flying thing, and Mike didn't want any part of it. He just said, "Give me a long umbilical with oxygen in it." So we ended up with a 50-foot umbilical. Mike had practiced that on backing up Ed White and Jim McDivitt on Gemini 4, and he went out there and did the EVA, and he had some problems, but he made them look easy. Mike's a really smart guy. He really knows how to do stuff and do it right real quick, and he did.
How long was this EVA? I forgot.
I think the one where we went over there was about an hour, but I don't remember. We were running out of gas the whole time, so we couldn't stay up there too long.
What do you mean running out of gas?
I used too much gas on the first rendezvous, so we were trying to make up for it on the second one. And we did pretty good, but we still didn't have enough.
Going back even a little further before Gemini or during, did you have a sense of what the Russians were up to? Did you get any briefings, or was mostly sort of word of mouth? I know we've talked to
The only
General Stafford about it and so on.
Yeah, the only thing I knew about it was that somebody said the Russians were doing a big rocket, and I hadn't heard such a thing. And then when we had the Russians over here, they came over and visited, and they were not interested in our rendezvous and dockings. We were doing a simulator. They were interested only in the ejection seat pictures, the ejection seat stuff out of the lunar landing training vehicle. So I knew in my heart that they must be going to the moon. Because who would want to watch something as dumb as that unless they're really serious, you know? And that's what they were interested in.
Oh. What year was that about? When did they come
It
over?
was
After
yeah,
the
it was
program?
no, it was right during Apollo 7, which I don't remember when that was, 1968 or some time frame in there, 67 or 68. We showed General Barry Gavoy, who was head of Star City, around.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I didn't know that.
Yeah.
Could you tell us a little bit about that? I didn't know that we had invited them over in
No,
'68.
I don't remember, and I don't remember why they came. We're just always being nice to folks. Yeah.
Even the Russians at that time.
Sure.
Well, Kennedy was a little more interested in kind of a joint program, wasn't he? I think, and that's something Johnson might have been pushing.
I don't know. Be honest with you, that's way beyond my pay grade in those days. I was just trained for the missions.
Just two more questions. Where were you when you heard about the fire?
We were backing up the next flight. We were backing up Jim McDivitt, Dave Scott, and Rusty Swackert for the next flight, and we were running tests. We'd just gotten out of the command and service module down in California when we heard about the Apollo fire. And the day before, Dave Scott had just been shocked inside the pressure suit in 19 psi oxygen. I was lucky. I think we're pretty lucky we didn't lose him. And we were running this test, and there's a big pool of water glycol floating around on the bottom of the vehicle, and the wire bundles in there were as big as my arm. And I said, "Man, these terrible looking wires." And but that's the way it was back in those days. You know, I was mighty sorry because I thought Gus was one of the greatest, and I sure liked Ed White and Roger. That was terrible.
You flew with Gus on Gemini 3.
Yeah, Gemini 3.
Any recollections of him? Did he talk about getting to the moon?
Well, Gus was the kind of guy that really worked hard and played hard and did everything right, and he never got the credit he deserved for designing the capsule, the Gemini capsule. But it was really a pilot type flying machine. It's really well laid out and well ranged, and he had a lot to do with that. And I thought he was a great guy. And we also participated in all the tests and checkout, and that's really the key to knowing those early spacecraft, because there was no books, no handbooks, no way to have simulators ready. So we were just right in the middle of things, helping. I don't know if we were helping or getting in the way, but we were doing test and checkout right along with the McDonnell Douglas people. There were McDonnell people in those days that worked on the vehicle. It was great.
Jeff, I'm sorry, go ahead.
Oh, I was just going to last question. You have something you want to
I was just going to say, being one of the original three, only handful that made it into Apollo, how much was he talking about going to the moon? He probably really wanted to make it there.
Well, I don't know. Gus didn't really ever talk about going to the moon. I figure if he hadn't gotten killed in the fire, he'd been the first person to land on the moon. He'd been the commander of the first flight to land on the moon, and probably would have. But he never talked about it. He just talked about doing the job right at the time. And I thought that was an admirable trait, actually, because if you worried about anything else besides what you're doing in this business, you wouldn't last long.
Last question. What do you tell your grandchildren, if they're old enough, about the moon and about your experiences there?
I'm real lucky that my grandchildren on occasion get to come and hear my talks about how human space exploration is going to save the human species before we're done, and they like it. I don't know they believe it, but I sure do.
Do they have any interest in getting there?
Well, they're very interested in science and mathematics, for which I'm eternally grateful. Yeah, it's tough to get kids interested in that hard stuff. Yeah.
Great. Cut. Or we just do some.
Instant.
Oh, while we're still rolling, I'm more curious why you chose to stay on. You're the only person who walked on the moon, flew the shuttle, flew Gemini. You really stayed on at NASA. Can you tell us a little bit about your
Well,
decision, if you would, behind that?
I never thought about it one way or the other. There's just so darn many interesting things going on around here, and so many things that need somebody to give them a nudge. And I really do and sincerely believe that human space exploration is the key to the future. I really do. I think that we're just beginning to learn how little we know about what's going on in the solar system. And we need to get out there and really explore with human beings. And we sure need to spread out the human species. We need to get it around on all these good old planets so that we don't end up, it's pretty evident from studying space for the last 25 years or so that what can happen on Earth can be very dynamic and very hard on the Earth people. Planet Earth won't care. It'll still be here long after all of us are gone. But why don't we spread out and do all the kind of things we can do to help make life better for people on Earth, even if bad things do happen? Well, human space exploration is, by accident, is just doing that right now. I mean, imagine living in an environment where you recycle all your food, water, waste, and grow crops in a totally closed-loop environment. Suppose Earth get hit by a bad asteroid. You might have to do that if you wanted to make it. And we're doing it right over here in this building, right across the way, right now, trying to learn how to do it. It's going to be very difficult.